It's Monty Hip here with the Complimenter, and we are excited about our podcast today because we have the one, the only David Paul Flaherty with us today. Cannot wait for this podcast to go out today. It's just going to be a lot of fun. And I was trying to think back, David, do we know, has it been what, 2 weeks we've known each other or 40 years? I was trying to decide.
Well, it's felt like 2 weeks, buddy, but
Stop it. My right
it's
eye
been
is
40 years. Yeah.
I think you may be right. It might be 40 years. Truly one of the people I've been most looking to just interview on this podcast. David and I do have just such great history. It goes all the way back to our college days, which was just a few years ago now, maybe 40 plus, but I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that. But one of the things that we really do focus on here on the Fourth Place podcast is finding people that really do care about life, leadership. They just have a vibrancy. There's just something about them. And David Paul, which I will always call him for the rest of my life. I don't think I've ever called him anything else.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Is just one of those people that's just so positively infectious, has one of those demeanors and spirits about him that you just don't find people that just don't want to be around David. And we just thought, man, what an incredible thing to have somebody on a podcast like that. And so when he hits over 4 million hits, on his social media thing, he'll have to buy me a Starbucks card.
That's right.
We'll
monetize it.
Yeah. Or he'll have to make me some of his great dishes in cooking. We'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. But let me just start by saying, as you know, here in the Fourth Place, we really have discovered that that fourth place is where we're all chasing to get after. And let me just give you that definition in case some of you have not been on with us before. And that fourth place is really an important place because one of the places we know is really important is your home life, your background, where you grew up, all those stuff, home. It's that respite. It's that synergy place, but also work. It's actually one of the places that probably the majority of the best time of our day is spent with so many millions of people. And then there's the third place, and that is where we like to go for vacations. Starbucks actually coined a term when they created their Starbucks stores that they wanted to create a third place. But the fourth place is what I really found is what everybody's chasing. And it's that place where in life you find where passion and motivation meet a resolve and determination to experience the life designed just for you, where you're loving life, you're chasing after the adventure, and you feel like that your life has purpose, meaning, and it has this vibrancy to it. That's what we all want. Well, good news for us today that are listening and watching this podcast. We found a person that is that. David Paul is just one of those people. So I want to dive right in, Dave. David Paul, when you think about your home, childhood, kind of the first place, and you think back at, I had the privilege of knowing your parents and just terrific people. But when you think about your childhood, are there any memories that you think about when you were growing up that were kind of, defining to you, that really had an impact on you? And then in that story, anything that you feel like that you just in regards, when you think back to your childhood, was there like a memory in elementary school, middle school, high school? And I know you were a stud wrestler, so we'll probably have to bring that up, and I don't want you to have to show your biceps today and just shock people. But I do know that that home life is important, and I know it's important to you in this season. But let's talk about home when you were a child. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I was a preacher's kid, and I had really amazing parents. Although, when you're growing up and you have a dad who's a pastor, there's always that frustration that you deal with. And I certainly dealt with that. But I was thinking about what my childhood memories are. And there really is such a plethora of great memories. And you'll have to excuse me, and Monty knows this about me. I cry really easy. So folks, just get over it. If you don't like a 6'2", 220-pound guy crying, just get over it. It's just what I do.
I
And
actually try to draw it out. It's kind of fun to
yeah,
observe.
yeah. Well, that's always been your gift a little bit, but um, I look back at that, and then there are some very what I would call pivotal and
Mm.
imperative experiences in childhood, and it's so amazing. Men in particular have such angst about their dads. They want to be identified by their father. They want to
So
hear that attaboy. They want to hear that, well, the line from the Bible. And my dad used to say this to me all the time. He'd say, "And this is my son in whom I'm well pleased."
wow.
And there was a lot of things that I didn't give him a lot of pleasure for, but
Yeah.
he almost manifest that. He would just speak it, and then it put pressure on me to feel like I had to live up to it.
Yeah.
But some of the things I remember is just, I, of course, I'm a get off my grass old guy now, and so my memories, I think about of just the freedom as a child,
Mm.
being able
Yeah.
to just go to the creek and spend all day, and we had this thing, and I was born in Wisconsin, but grew 8 years of my life in Roseburg, Oregon, and just down around the block from us, we had these things we called the green, and they were these long football fields between these two streets, and
Oh,
all
really?
the kids would get there. I think I got my first 2 or 3 concussions on those fields.
This explains a lot. It was your
Yeah,
first
yeah. Well, it
concussion.
does. And then when you find out more about the next stages of my life, you go, "Oh, yeah, okay, I get it." But
It's all coming together.
that's right. But just innocence personified. And
Wow.
I have a song on one of my first albums that Ron Gallner wrote, who and who was my producer in my music, but he has a song called "Innocence, Innocence. Why did I let
I
you go?
remember that
It was
song.
innocence. Now I know the way of a world I never should have known." And yeah, I was innocent in so many ways, and but but I look back and I was thinking of the moments that were pivotal in my life, and of course, being a preacher's kid, almost all of my life revolved around the church.
Wow.
And those experiences in the church gave me such aptitude for so many things,
Wow.
aptitude in sales, aptitude in relationships, experience to develop and understand people, because the church is people,
Yeah.
and it's a learning to juggle. But some of the things that really stand out to me are, I grew up in a denomination called the Assemblies of God, which is a you know
Evangelical organ.
gospel,
Yeah.
full gospel, charismatic, and in those days, probably the other side of the tracks kind of church,
Gotcha.
that was very emotional and very, I guess I have to say, responsive to what they would call a move of God. So
Wow.
some of the things that stand out to me are those childhood experiences where I saw and I experienced what I believed and still believe at this time was a move of God, and the catharticism of the emotion that was wrapped around that that and some of it was pure emotionalism probably, but there was a cathartic experience in that. So
It sensitized you.
that's right. It
Yeah.
when I think about that, I think about those times and just how important they were to me,
Yeah.
and how life changing they were to me, and probably I look at them in fondness and in longing to some respect, because I really don't
Sure.
have that now.
Yeah.
Other than I'll sing a song about Shep and cry, or
Yeah.
Monty will take me out for coffee and tell me a story and make me cry or whatever.
Yeah. And it's one
But
of my favorite things to do. You know what's funny about that, David Paul? Is it's interesting to hear you talk about that, and having had the privilege of knowing your dad, and just even in just talking about your childhood, I see so much of that in you now with people.
yeah,
You're
I hope so.
gracious,
I hope
You're
so.
engaging. And so there really is this heritage part to you that was really formed at the very early stages of your life, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it was. And it was funny. Like I said, because there was aspects of the church that I struggled with, and the pressure that my mom and dad were under, particularly my dad. I
Sure.
struggled with identity for him, and it really wasn't until the last. Well, it was interesting. My first wife is Lori. I met her. Lori. We met at college,
Yep.
and she's just one of my best friends still. And her husband was my next door neighbor. Her current
Crazy
husband.
story.
Yeah. So they actually met at one of my parties, which we might talk about in Nashville. But I was sitting out on his back porch and I was just griping about my dad one day. And he looked at me and he said, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
He goes, "You're the light." And I kind of went, "What?" He said,
Yeah.
you're the light of this neighborhood, and your parents made that for you."
Wow.
And
It was a
it,
defining moment, wasn't it?
it revolutionized my viewpoint of my parents from that moment on.
Wow.
And he is, you know, he was my next door neighbor and my dear friend, and he still is one of my closest friends, and he's married to one of my closest friends who I happen to be married to at one time as well. And we have such a loving, genuine relationship that it's kind of surreal in all.
Yeah. When you talk about relationship, I mean, there's not too many people on the planet that would have that story.
Yeah.
But I think probably one of the things that stands out, David Paul, is something that I think would just be fun to just chat about for a couple of minutes. You are a relational beast. There's just people want to be around you. You invite people to your home. You cook these massive meals. I've experienced it, and I got to hand it to you. You have a gift, and you love doing it.
I
And
do.
so I think that whole journey, in terms of the fact it really did have a big part of what I would now call the legacy that you're now building upon, but you've actually helped establish that. And it all started back at the home front. It
Absolutely.
really is an important thing, isn't it?
It is. And I think of my childhood. My mom was an amazing relationship person, and she was probably the inspiration for that in our family. But she would make dinners. And for those of you that grew up in the church, some of these names would be valuable, or you'd recognize them. But I had the Blackwood brothers sing for me around the table in our house. I had
That's
I
crazy.
had
They're like legend in that
Yeah.
arena.
I mean, every country singer from 80s back acknowledges the Blackwood brothers. They were almost every one of them had
They were
relationships or
institutional legends.
identified. But I had David Wilkerson sit across the table and tell me stories from New York. I had Bernard Johnson, from the famous missionary from Brazil, sit across the table and tell me stories. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember one time I was laying in my bed and a missionary was telling stories out in the living room.
And you
I
were in
fell in
bed.
my bed, tell another story, you know.
Yeah.
So it again, it gave me an experience that, again, looking back, is just, I took for granted. I took for granted these things and these experiences, but they were profound,
Yeah.
and they shaped my life, every single one of them. And so it was really um, a valuable experience for me.
Yeah. It wasn't just a rite of passage, but it was foundational. What's so fascinating to hear you talk about that. And it's fun and I just have memories of your mom and dad, just myself, and you telling these stories,
Sure.
and just how kind he was. And you guys look so much alike today. It's just like everybody will just go, "Oh, my word."
It's so bizarre, Monty. I look in the mirror and I go, "Man, I thought you were dead." I mean, it's just I do. I look like my dad, and my brother thinks I act like my dad, and I do. My dad was a foodie, and I'm a foodie.
Yeah.
He loved to cook. I love to cook. I love to entertain. That was really more my mom, the entertainment aspect of it. My wife is an amazing table setter, an
Oh,
amazing
Jackie is the best.
presenter. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like you go to a five-star restaurant in your house, right?
yeah, and so we've got boxes of dishes from hell, but it's it's just those are the things that shaped me as a child.
I want
As
to
I
talk
grew
about that.
older, there was multiple things. I got my first guitar when I was probably 7 years old for Christmas, and learned a few chords, but didn't really start playing it until I was in college.
Oh, wow. So you had it that whole time.
I had it that whole time, and I could play,
Yeah,
I
you
could,
fiddle around on it. Yeah, sure.
yeah,
You could play,
I
but
could
you
do
didn't take it seriously.
right. I didn't really develop, and in 1976, I went out and bought another guitar, and I really pushed it even to some of the mockery of some of my students, my
Wow.
classmates, but
I'm
I worked
shocked
pretty
by
hard
that.
at that.
How could you? I can't believe it. I don't believe it.
Yeah,
It's funny as you talk about that, David, is that what's so interesting, and now knowing that you have these amazing grandchildren, you and Jackie, you spend so much time, your two kids that you're now have a grandchild in
yeah,
regards to your own children, and you're so relational. And it really is something that's a legacy part of what I now see you doing and posting on Facebook. And it's like the grandkids in your lap, the
yeah,
grandkids outside, the grandkids with Jackie, everybody, you're creating what I like to say is moments make memories.
yeah.
And what you're basically saying is those moments were foundational to your home life. I really appreciate you giving that background and just being so transparent. And
Yeah.
that's why I knew it'd be so fun to have you. Well, that's the first place. I
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about the second place. And that second place is where we spend our life in our career in terms of advancing. And anybody that knows you, you're just one of the best salesmen there are. You love it, you embrace it. You've been sales manager, sales director, vice president of sales of companies. You've had so many different titles. But the thing that's been most impressive is that almost everywhere that you've gone, this relational aspect that I hear you talking about from home, you've actually personified that in the professional realm. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that in terms of in the sales world to what you've done. And you've been just a highest level of sales, raised millions of dollars for companies, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You've just been an expert at that. When you think about that second place in terms of what gets the best of you of the best hours of your day, what would you say were some of the factors that led to your success in that second place, your workplace? What are some of the things that you did that you really felt made the difference in terms of you being able to advance, but just your approach to that work life as you bring into place that history of your home life? How is the professional world that you developed? What formed it? What shaped it? What designed it?
Well, I think what in very kind words, but I think one of the things that that the relational aspect of sales. Now, I went through a series called The Challenger, which kind of for lack of a better term, poo-poos the idea of relational sales. And what I love about all these sales courses and everything else you can take, you want to take out what's good for you. It's kind of like religion.
Yeah.
The Bible even says it. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Don't just buy into everything. But there's pieces that you have to learn as you grow. Now, I don't know. Even back when I was a kid, I was a salesman. When I was 13 years old, the first day of summer came along. There was a knock on my door. My dad walked into my downstairs basement that was completely dark. I was planning on sleeping until noon. It was 7:30 in the morning, and he said, "It's the first day of summer. Get a job, or I'll find you a job." And
Wow.
at 13 years old, I went out and I bought a paintbrush, and I started going around to the neighbor's house. "Sir, I noticed your fence needs to be painted. Would you like me to give you a quote on that, or would you
So
like me
you
to?"
started your painting business. That was
At
one of the
13
first
years
things that
old.
I knew you as at
Yeah.
13.
Yeah. And then my dad helped me. We would get big jobs, and my dad, who was a pastor, would come out and work with me. My dad taught me how to work. And I think that knock on the door at 13 years old was maybe the most important knock in my life.
Wow. What a,
Because because it said, okay, we're not, you're going to be focused, you're going to be directioned, you're going to have reason to go. And so even at 13 years old, I became a salesman in selling my paint jobs. And sales ultimately is selling yourself. Now, one of the things people have said for many, many years, "Oh, you could sell ice to Eskimos." And I can't, because I have to believe in what I'm selling, and I have to I have to become passionate with what I'm selling.
I believe that
So,
about you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and I've tried it. I've tried selling things I didn't believe in, and it just doesn't work. And so I became a passionate relationship sailor. Now, as
Now
I
hold on again.
grew,
I want you to say that again. You became a passionate relationship salesman.
correct. Yeah. Now, as I grew, I also understood that, and this is one of the things when you have, for lack of a better term, strong personality, or you know how to work the room, as they say.
Yeah.
Um, you can start making that your sales approach, and it's kind of like you can I can charisma them into the sale. And that's where that challenger sale really was challenging for me, although I had already learned it prior to that, but just reinforced. You got to know what you're talking about, so there's a due diligence. And due diligence means that you spend the time. Now, when I went to work for a company later in my life called Triumph Learning, and I said I really hadn't learned the due diligence yet, and
Wow.
I was very successful. I was top 3 salesman every year
Yeah.
for multiple
Just kind of
years.
on natural talent and ability and interest to succeed.
Exactly. And my wife would come on the road with me, and she goes, "You don't even talk about what you're selling." And I go, "That's because I want people to talk about themselves." And that is great to a point. But there was other people in that company that maybe didn't have the relationship sell, but they were selling equal number of dollars in sales to
They
me.
could move the product.
But they were doing it from a knowledge base. They were former teachers, they were former
Gotcha.
involved in that, and they were doing it from a knowledge base. And so when I combined those two, it really allowed me to really understand the
Yeah.
importance of not just being a charisma guy, not just being able to work the room, but knowing why you're working the room, knowing your product, understanding. When I became vice president of Triumph over the years, um, my thing I would tell my salespeople is, listen, you've got to be able to be in your car driving and walk them through that process, walk them through the knowledge of that thing, without it being in front of you, without having notes, without having you gotta invest yourself.
So there's a competency in regards to the rapport. So
Yeah,
you were build rapport,
yeah.
but you had the competency so that when you actually started talking about the effort and the product to which you were selling, you were bringing that sense of that I'm going to be connected to you, but lest you think I'm not prepared,
Right.
you had
Well,
something to sell that really gave them a belief factor.
and the thing you hear all the time is, you're not a salesman until you hear no. And if you're basing everything on charisma and basing everything on
Yeah.
relationships, then you have to accept no. But if you've done your due diligence, um, and my wife really helped me with this. We would go on the road and she would, I worked in schools. I sold to school districts and states and national presentations and all around the country. And while we'd be going there, she would be online and she would be researching for me, giving me information that I
Was
could
she a
walk
paid
in.
assistant? Did she
She
receive a
she did
stipend?
go to work for me eventually, and
Oh,
actually,
that's
she
hilarious.
actually had her own states eventually as well. And
Oh, wow.
she's really a brilliant and a diligent researcher, and just really amazing at that. And but she would give me information so I could go in and I could say, man, congratulations on your seventh grade boys team winning the city championship or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's those little things of due diligence that enhance. Now you have to also go into the understanding what you're selling. And people used to say, my customers used to say, man, I love your passion. And I always loved that. I loved that they loved my passion, but I wanted them. And as I grew in this relationship with them, they did start coming to me, even knowing I didn't have this particular product they would look for. They would come to me and they'd go, hey, do you know anybody who does, or how can I do this? Or what do you think about this? And it really allowed me to embed myself with my customers in a way of trust, in a way of, they call it consultative selling, which is, really understanding so you can
Yeah.
be a consultant to people.
But you
And
were actually interested in the person. They would feel that interest,
yeah,
but then you would say, I know about this. And so if you know about this, I know you'll do the due diligence even
yeah,
to find the answer,
yeah,
even if you don't know it. So you really built a relationship structure that was built on product, sales, delivering something that they could have confidence in. And if I'm hearing you right, not only did they feel that you believed in it, but you didn't sell what you didn't believe in.
yeah, I didn't. And so that was, and listen, there's things out there that have to be sold that people, I guess you gotta find your passion. And I don't care if you're selling paint jobs on a house
Mm-hmm.
or you're selling a pair of shoes, there's passion involved, you
Yeah.
know,
Wow.
and a guy named Mike Boone, I've had such an eclectic career. It's really kind of bizarre. But a guy named Mike Boone hired me my first kind of what I'd call secular job because for almost 20 years, I spoke to students in school and did music. So
Yeah.
I've spoken to students literally around the world and went into presentations. In fact, our relationship goes back to where you helped me develop my message.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've kind of been a complimenter for a long time,
Stop it. No,
and
what? Well, I didn't hear you. Could you say that again?
yeah, yeah, right. But you had profound effect on that, and it was my message was called "Attempt the Impossible." Well, prior to that, I went to work with a company called the Power Team.
I remember that.
Yeah, recognize it.
Well, in fact, David, if we talk about that, we won't spend a lot of time there, but one of our other business partners, Brandy, Christine Summers Dorset, she was actually a junior hire at the time, now one of the owners of Complimenter.
Yeah.
And she was one of the people that you put on like the bar or something. I think she recounts that story every time she's with you. I think she remembers like she was like a little cheerleader or something like that.
Yeah. Well, we did crazy stuff. I look back at it now, and I think people accurately kind of called it Christianity's answer to big time wrestling, because it was boisterous, it was loud, we did these quote unquote feats of strength where we'd get these steel bars and then bench people over our heads with them and then bend them in our teeth.
That's what you had Brandy on, wasn't it?
Yeah. Brandy on one end and another girl on the other end, and we bench press them over, not bench press them, but bench them over. But during that time, I broke 14 feet of ice with my head. Again, goes back to, I think one of my last concussions was in Kansas City. I was going to break 13 feet of ice. I'm up on top of this scaffolding. I'm going to slam my head into this ice, and I'm up there. I'm getting
that goes back to that childhood concussion thing, I think.
Yeah, right. I'm getting the crowd pumped, the music's blaring. There's about 5,000 people in this auditorium. They're screaming and, yelling. Some of them are crying, and I raise up and I slam my head into the ice and it collapsed. And I crawled down off the scaffolding and they gave me the microphone. And that's exactly what I did. I was unconscious, man. That was the last time I broke my head. I was unconscious. I was walking and talking, but I just stood there and I
truly in a daze.
You were truly in a daze. I basically knocked myself out. That was the last time I broke with my head, thank God. And now I need neck surgery and my shoulder's down.
Really shocking.
But we did crazy stuff, and I probably broke on an average 300 to 500 cinder blocks a day for 2 years.
Wow, that's crazy.
And I was in great shape. But I look back at it now and I just think, man, wow, just how stupid are you? Because we abused ourselves. I talk about this a lot. By the way,
oh my God,
I'm getting this fixed. I'm getting this fixed next month.
Are you really? That's part of your signature.
I know. I don't know if I'll be able to be who I am without this.
But, the sideways pinky.
Yeah, I always say
without trying.
This is the result of stupid stuff. Although that happened 50 years ago.
Let me ask you a question on that, David, because I think this is really important. There's a lot of people that do different jobs. They do different things. They kind of are like finding their way.
Yeah.
When you're talking to people as it relates to the area of your work, what was the challenge for you to figure out in finding your career path, where you really landed and really becoming an incredible salesperson? What were the growth points for you? What were the challenges in work life that you had to grow in, you had to adjust, you had to go, you know what, I got to figure this out. And I heard one of them, I had to go do research. I had to gain competency. You couldn't just land on your own natural rapport, relational talent. So I heard that one. What lessons did you have to learn? What were your pain points in growing into that career before we go to the third place?
I started telling the story earlier, and I don't think I finished it, which is kind of my nature. But a guy named Mike Boone, I went to work I was selling aircraft parts in North and South America.
Aircraft parts.
Aircraft parts.
I did not know you sold aircraft parts.
Yeah, I did that for a couple of years, and we did really well at it. But he had a line that I thought was really a profound line, and it said, "You have two holes to hear with, one to speak with." And I jokingly talked to my team that I built for this last company. I used to always say, I have the right to remain silent. I'm just incapable. And probably one of the things I had to learn more than anything else was to shut up.
Wow.
And
yeah, learn to listen. I say all the time, you have to listen to learn to lead. And I never met anybody who got smarter when their mouth was moving.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And you do some things in your complementer program that I've embraced. Taking notes. I'm a multitasker and all that stuff, so I have a pretty good memory and all that thing, or I used to before I hit too many bricks with my head.
Yeah.
But I found that not only does it help you remember yourself, but it acknowledges people. People want to be acknowledged. They want to be identified. They want to be viewed as valuable. And I think you can be manipulative with that.
Sure.
And I hope to God that that's never been my MO. But I think when you're a passionate person, I think one of the things my colleagues, I'm not sure they could ever really buy into me, because I think that's
fascinating.
A little bit of a show. And to some degree, I suppose it was, but that's the way I roll, you know. So I'm
Yeah, but I think that kind of mixes in, and we'll talk about this in just a second. But your whole music world, and we're going to move into that in just a minute into third place. But you have been a performer, going back to what you were talking about, your school assembly. There is a performance part of sales to which you are moving you're moving the person, you're bringing them in to where it's almost like they can't say no if you've really done it well. So I get the piece of that. I don't think anybody in sales would doubt that.
Yeah.
But what I think I'm hearing you say was you really wanted to know the person. So when that was in play, they didn't doubt that you did care, even though they would know that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, that and my perspective of sales, when I would walk into a room, my mentality was, I don't know how they're living without me.
Wow.
I don't know with what I've got, what the way I manifested that was, I don't know how they can function.
This is your lucky day.
Yeah,
I'm bringing this product and I'm bringing myself.
Yeah, and now again, that can become a Barnum and Bailey thing too. But I think there's this line that you have to walk, and that is between knowledge, passion, relationships, wanting to make a living. Yeah. And my last boss that I had, he almost saw salesman as a dirty word.
Oh yeah, you hear that a lot in terms of like car salesmen, those kind of things that they wear a label, and some of them are multi-talented, but there's an association to pressure.
Yeah, and so there's this connotation that you have that you have to overcome, I think, initially. And I guess that's why one of the reasons why when you care about an individual and you do it genuinely.
Yeah.
The line, hey, I'm done talking about me. What do you think of me? Kind of thing. You got to get over that,
Yeah.
And one of my biggest compliments that I have is when people say what you just said. I didn't know you did that. That's a compliment to me, because at some point,
it wasn't always my story.
I actually did it.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I think that's really true, David. And one of the things I'd love to do is move into this place called the third place. You've really done a great job talking about that home world, that second place in terms of the work life. But the third place, I actually believe that is probably your sweet spot. There's so many things you love. You love hunting. You love cooking. You love music. You actually have produced a hit song that you wrote and developed that went crazy. And so you have so many different passions. And I want to talk about that third place. And the definition of third place is it's that place where you can go easily. And some people have a place they like to vacation. It's their third place. Some people love the mountains. Some people like to go to the beach. Some want a resort in a pool. Some want to go to a spa. Some people want what? Just silence. Some people want a theme park. Yeah. You have so many different third places. Yeah. You take people hunting. You take people fishing. You've done events to where you've helped people you've taken them to concerts. You put on concerts. When you think about your third place, and I'm actually fascinated to learn this, in all of those places, cooking, making experiences with friends, hunting, all of the stuff that you've done, what is David Paul Flaherty's favorite third place? Is there a retreat place? Is there a cabin? Is there a group of people? What's your third place that you just go, if I get there, man, I'm a happy, happy person?
Well, the people thing is always important to me, and I love to hunt. I love to fish. I'm a bow hunter. If you looked at my office right now, my wife won't let me have any other. I say I've got a horny office because I do.
Yeah. No more trophies allowed.
Yeah, no, not anywhere else here. I think I've got 2 elk racks, 3 full head mounts, just and
Yeah.
of course I keep them so people can't see them because it's not kosher all the way around.
Yeah. Be careful. Be careful. Way to be sensitive.
There is nothing in the world like being in the mountains on a crisp morning and hearing the scream of an elk and calling that in to 8 yards away from you and harvesting that animal and then taking.
There's some hunters that hate you right now. When you said within 8 yards, there's people that hate you that you have that ability to call them in that close.
Well, I think that's the musical aspect of it. And some of my elk hunting partners, they go, the only reason you can do that is because you're a musician, or whatever.
Wow.
And but I love it. But there's nothing quite like that. But there's nothing better than sitting around for the last 25 years, except I think for 2 years, I've hosted a It's a Wonderful Life Christmas party where I cook.
I've been to that dinner. It's pretty spectacular.
I've had as many as 36 people at the table, and it just kind of evolved, and it's the same people that come for most of the time. People come in and out and they get sick, they can't make it, and somebody else fills it, whatever. But it's people that I've developed friendships. It started in Nashville, and it really worked around. I was a soccer coach for 13 years, which is another third place thing that was a very passionate thing for me. And they were really my family in Tennessee. I lived on 200 acres with a little farmhouse. They called it Camp Flaherty, and all the kids. I'd have 13 kids spending the night about every.
So you were into athletics. I know you wrestled, you did soccer coach. I don't want to say a lot about it, but we could probably spend 20 minutes on our intramural flag football team that we were dominant on. Yeah. I think we went undefeated. I don't want to say a lot about it, but we were pretty much key players in that.
That's right. We did. Yeah. Pictures in the annual.
Yeah,
put it up on the wall.
Yeah, there you go.
But, music, one of the things about the third place is I really always wanted music to be my second place. And it was my second place for many years.
Wow.
But one of the things about having so many interests, and when I moved to Nashville, I started hanging out with, these top writer songs. I mean, I'd throw parties in Nashville. I'd have 150 people there and 5 number 1 songwriters playing their songs at my parties, And I hung out with these guys, but I realized there's a level of, it kind of is in sales. Anybody, I used to say this, I could teach anybody to sell, which is absolutely not true. But, anybody can, potentially sell something at Tijuana or, Starbucks. But if you're going to excel at it, it's another level. One of my best friends is a guy named Michael Peterson. Michael and I grew up together. Michael, if you, his first album had top 40 songs on it in the country's charts. He has a number 1 song called From Here to Eternity. He really demonstrated the difference between third place and second
place.
Yeah. And third place is a great place to be, to escape to run from, or run to. But it's also a place that you can make your second place. Now, unfortunately, a lot of times when they're your third place and you make them your second place, then they become second place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a guy named Rick Enlow said a line to me. In fact, he gave me a guitar and he wrote this from the brothers Karamazov, the Russian brother. What's that name of that book? Brothers Karamazov, I think, or something like that. And a line in there is be careful when you attain what you dream. And because it changes.
It changes.
Music for me was, all my life when people would say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to sing songs. I wanted to sing songs for Jesus, man. I mean, that was probably my passion and
your ambition. your desire.
Probably and even though I've written a lot of secular songs and have had cuts on albums from secular songs, my passion probably, in fact, right now I'm writing a song with the pastor at our church that probably still is my passion, but so music for me was something that came pretty naturally. I picked up the guitar. Now I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on that guitar, but it was fun for me. It was a passion for me. But there's another level. And when I moved to Nashville, I moved there because I wanted to be a songwriter, and I would hang out with these guys, and I just realized that, I would rather catch a fish now and then or go hunting now and then. And those guys are just so one focused. They're so,
and they got themselves trapped because they thought, I'm just waiting for my break. I'm just got to do this. I just got to meet the right person. And sometimes you can miss. I love what you said about going from third place to second place. You go, I'm going to do this. And sometimes it works out, but sometimes it is that you actually can stick yourselves, and instead of allowing it to be something that you love, you try to make it a career. And if it doesn't work out, you can really cause yourself a lot of internal frustration and challenge, can't you?
Sure. Now, the beauty about third place things, and why I think you find them so imperative and so important to life, is that there's something you can continue all your life. In our church that I'm going to, the second week of every Sunday, they do a writer or a music night, open mic. They do an open mic at their church.
Oh, wow.
I love it. And the first time I went there was this 60-some-year-old guy that was learning how to play the guitar at 65.
You love that, didn't you?
That's cool. And I love that the third place, there's always room for another spot in your third place.
I love that.
I've always loved to cook, but I've become passionate about cooking probably in the last 10, 15 years, where it's something that, you go onto my YouTube subscription list and you go, who is this guy? I've got a hunting video subscription next to a cooking video, next to a church video, next to a music video, next to it,
multifaceted, David Paul, multifaceted.
Yeah,
you're saying something that I think is really important, and you would know this about me very well, but I just have found so many people just don't even know how to have fun.
Yeah.
They don't know how to laugh. I call it the family reunion photo smile. They just actually are trying to pretend that they're doing well. And I think it's so important. I say all the time, moments make memories.
Yeah.
And you have to have third places in your life. And if you were to wrap it all up in terms of the third place and rank, I want you to just rank. I'm interested in what you would say. My third place is, if I were going to go, if I only had one third place to go, would it be a place? Would it be cooking? What would be your third place ranking of 3 or 4 things that I know you do? And you've listed like 5. What would be your top 3 third places, and why are they there for you? What do they mean to you?
Well, first place would be surrounding myself with friends, entertaining friendships, I love friends.
Yeah,
and I have friends, you being one of them. And
David.
It's you have a line that you use quite a bit as well, intentionality, and I love that in multiple things. When you're intentional, that's where you find your joy. That's where you find your experience.
Love that.
I'm on this kick right now. There's this couple in, because I like to scuba dive and all this stuff as well.
You're kidding. Shocking.
Yeah. And this couple in Australia, I'm following them. They've done this 100-day, 200-day trip up the coast, and they're just living off the coast, living off the land, living.
Wow.
And I mean, they're two just absolutely beautiful people,
Yeah.
physically. And then they're just experiencing things that
They're vibrant.
they're intentionally experiencing things that at 65 I probably can't do, and so being intentional from day one. I look at so many of the kids today, and they have no intentionality other than the latest game, or
Yeah.
I mean, dating has gone by the wayside for kids, because there's not an intentionality in what they do. So I like to plan things. I like to have friends around me. That's probably my number one passion. Second passion, I love to write music, but because of my hands, because of some of the things, I'm not as good as I used to be. So it's kind of probably slid down. My next one would probably be nothing like a hunt. I've got a friend named Brent Noble that is my one of my, well, he's my brother from another mother. He's
your hunting partner. You guys don't get separated too easily.
No, we have had intentional experiences that I can't even explain. Another guy who just passed away, a guy named Jerry Deshawn, who was 20 years older than me and kind of became my hunting mentor and really taught me how to be a bow hunter. But he was so intentional. We would get up in the mountains and he'd go, "Can you believe that people come up to these mountains and they're eating beans and a can and bread?" And he would come up and he had lobster and shrimp and just
my kind of hunter.
Yeah, it was an experience.
An experience.
That yep. Was there, that to me, there's nothing quite like sitting around a fire and listening to elk bugle in the background, or sitting up in a tree stand and having. I took my brother hunting in Tennessee one time, and that morning we had a raccoon, a coyote, a bobcat, a turkey, a skunk, and deer all come by in the morning. And
you're like, I am in euphoria.
Yeah, it's just there's a serenity. And I know that there's probably people out there that maybe don't believe in harvesting animals. One of the reasons I do that is, I have this huge pressure on me now because my grandkids would rather have the venison that I make, which an old man in Tennessee taught me how to do, than candy.
You're proud of that. That's heritage, right? Don't have,
my venison is hickory smoked, pepper encrusted, maple infused.
Venison. I'm going to get a request for your recipes. Thank you for that, David.
Yeah, I'd be happy to give it, because this old man gave it to me. Although I never leave things.
Add my own stuff, and I know that when you do cooking, you don't do it by a recipe; you do it by feel.
But it's so I feel pressure to get that now, but just I've never done things that you can walk away and not be quote unquote successful and still feel contentment. I'm a pretty success driven guy, and I love to harvest animals, but I can walk away from a hunt and not have done that and go, man, that might have been the best week of my life.
Wow. I love what you just said right there, David. And it's a good transition in our last few moments to talk about that fourth place. It's crazy to think we've almost been an hour chatting. It's just so fun to have this time and just not only hear you, but reflect on and watching your life be such an example of everything you've said. It's like I'm going like, yep, he does that. Well, and so
and just I hesitate to be too much of an example because I've got plenty of failure in my life, folks. Believe me.
We're doing another 2 hours on that later.
Yeah. Well, that'll take 3 hours of my failures. We can do my successes in 15 minutes, but my failures are loud and
so let me ask you this, David. And again, let me repeat that definition. The fourth place, which I feel like everybody wants to land. At Complimenter, we work on people finding their mission statement, their
Yes.
purpose, defining their signature of who they want to be, what do they want to be known for, how others experience them. We spend a lot of time helping people do that. But this definition, when it really came to me to put together this whole idea of the fourth place, it really does come down to this place where passion, motivation, meet this resolve and determination to experience the destiny designed for you. We all want that sense of destiny.
Yeah.
What were the challenges for you to find your fourth place? What kept you from it? There's so many things where you see people and you go, you're right there. Don't miss this. Make the choice. What were some of the challenges you had, your pain points in getting to that fourth place? And what would you challenge others as we begin to wrap up our time together today on that very subject?
Well, I think for me, the number one challenge that I had was determining what my destination was. And it's yeah, my brother-in-law is a guy that at 16 years old, he knew what he was going to be. He was going to be a fireman. At 16 years old, he was part of the fire brigade. At 16 years old, he started spending the night at the fire station. And
Wow.
Just the last couple of years, he retired as a battalion chief for the fire department.
So he was on the straight path from early on.
That is so unique to me. Just so, I mean, there's not that many people that know what they want to be when they grow up and stick to it, and just have that focus. So I think for my number one hurdle for me was, okay, what are you going to do? I used to like to golf, and I had to get to the point where I go, okay, there's just too many things I love to do. I got it. I still like to golf. I suck, but I still like to golf. I don't know if I like to golf. I like the camaraderie of the golf course.
I believe that. Yeah.
So, the thing for me is, I think taking a hard look at who you are and being honest with yourself and saying, okay, this is where I want to go. Now, what are those steps? And that goes back to that intentionality. And I challenge my boys all the time about this is how are you going to get there? Show me how you're going to get there. I have an example that I use a lot of times. I have people take a piece of paper and wrinkle it up. And when I'm speaking to a group, and I'll do this with teachers, and I'll have them make this ball with a piece of paper. And then I'll say to them, all right, now what I want you to do is I want you to take that ball and I want you to hit the target. And they all just kind of look around like
they're looking around.
Where's the target? Sometimes they'll throw it at the principal,
Yeah.
But and then I'll say, this is so often how we go through life. We don't have a target. So if you don't have a target, you're never going to hit it. I don't care how hard you try. So then I'll put up a target and I'll say, all right, now take that ball and I want you to hit the target. And 90% of the time they fall short or they hit way outside the target. But first off, they have a target. So that determination of who you're going to be. And that doesn't mean that you have to decide that at 12 years old and not evolve.
Yeah.
It might be that target evolves with you and changes with you. And it certainly has with me.
Yeah. And I love what you said there, David, because it so fits in what we are all about at Complimenter. When we work on people and developing that sense of identity, their purpose statement, their mission statement, we have a framework that we spent years studying on how to do about it. A lot of people do their trying to get their purpose, their target they want to hit, and it's what they want to do. And I love what you just said, and you really framed it well. Who do you want to be?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be? How do you want to do it? How do you want to approach this thing with life? And then what you want to do, because what you want to do, like you said, it changed for you. But what I'm walking away with today is that you really became the person you wanted to be as a child. You became relational, intentional in terms of people. You became a person, as I'm thinking about the summary of this conversation today, you became a person that really was what I worked at, making sure that I knew what I was talking about, how I want to do it. I would be prepared. I would be sound. And then you think about it, and then the way you went about it in terms of that third place, you made people feel safe. You really did develop a game plan in this season of your life now. As you think about the future, I'm so just honored to know you, but more than that, I just respect you. And we've been in a lot of journey together, and I just have like this great deep appreciation for the way you've battled. And like we said, we're not doing the 3-hour episode today, but man, you've had to package life in really tough choices, difficult things that you walk through. But as I sit here and look at you today, when you think about the fourth place in terms of that resolve and determination to experience the destiny designed for you, as we wrap up this time today, David, what would you say to people to make sure go chase your destiny? And as you think about your future, last thing, what do you think your destiny is in this next season of life for you?
Well, I guess my encouragement would be to people, it'd be something I've already reflected on, is have a target and be willing to change that target. Sometimes I think we can get, you talked about that with musicians, they can get so lost in the dream of their target that they lose perspective. And then also realize that sometimes we don't always get to do what we want to do. Sometimes we do what we have to do. And when you take on responsibilities like children and families and relationships, you have to make choices that aren't always that fun.
And they're seasons sometimes, but they feel like they're going to be forever. I've seen that happen with a lot of folks.
But what you do is you find your passion inside of it. I didn't want to be an educational salesperson. I wanted to be a rock star,
Yeah.
and but I found passion and I found purpose. I found that working with people and building people up and supporting people and having products that I know that can help people allowed me to share my passion and find that passion. I used to say this in my presentation back when I was speaking in high schools. I don't care if you're going to be a donut baker, but be the best damn donut baker you can be, and so that's for me,
that's where you're going in the future, staying in that focus.
I'm going to stay there. I know. Listen, I hope I can retire, and I want to spend a lot of time on the beach. I want to travel the world. I have traveled the world in many ways already.
And Jackie would like to say thank you for that encouragement.
And I want to share it with my grandkids and my children, and hopefully, if things move in the direction that we feel like they're moving, I'll be able to share that with multiple people as well. And
well, I love that. And as we end this time today, David, one of the things that I walk away from this time that I hope a lot of people walk away with is that you have been generous with your life.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Well, I am telling you, we believe at a Complimenter in accurate affirmation. And I've been a recipient of a generous life and a person who would just do incredible things. And you're one of those people that would just go, if somebody was in need, and I think you have a list of them, and I think several of them have called, hey, David, I know that if I ran into a place in life, and I've had a couple of those moments that we've had some lunches over.
Yeah.
You've been that person. So I want to just say thanks for being on this podcast today. And I think you're such a great representation of being someone that just chased destiny. And I just love that in regards to that fourth place. So I want to encourage everybody that's been listening today, man, don't stay stuck. Do what David said, man. If you think that your third place is going to be your second place, or you may have had that home life would be something different. I had that experience, and you know what? I was able to take the past and not let it haunt me, but guide me. What we're saying here today is that this fourth place podcast, you can be in that place. Yeah. Don't settle for less. Any closing thought?
Well, Monty, I think one of the things that's always been an inspiration for people who know you is that is exactly what you do. And with the complimenter, um, you guys have really encapsulated that into a real process. And that it's not just the fourth place, but the third place and the fourth place are things that you have to become intentional in. And I think
Wow.
you guys do so well is give people the ability to find their target. And
Wow.
so, for
Love.
those of you who aren't familiar with this program, man, I so highly recommend it and believe in it, and have gone through it, and seen the power of having somebody on your side. And
Yeah.
that is that you know and sometimes having somebody on your side that tells the truth isn't always comfortable, right? But
Yeah.
having a truth teller um, is a beautiful thing. And so, man, what a joy. And I was just kind of thinking, you didn't make me cry, sucker.
Yeah, well, wait till our lunch.
That's right.
David, thanks. It's been great to be with you. And for all those that want to know more in regards about the complimenter, you can go to thecomplimenter.com. But more than anything, go look in the mirror today
Yeah.
and realize the person that you are and what David Paul's been sharing. David, thank you. You're a gift to people. You're a gift to life. You're a gift to me. You're a gift to Complimenter. Thanks for your time today.
Likewise, my friend.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye bye.